Welcome to Something Special Designs by Tina Williams, where I create cottage, French country, shabby, and farmhouse decor, all with thrifted items. Sit back and enjoy today's video, and if you like it, please do me a favor and give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I upload future videos. Hi everybody, this is Tina. I hope you're doing well. I've got 3 projects today and they all have to do with these plastic eggs that I got from Hobby Lobby. I first sprayed these with some primer and I used a Rust-Oleum white. I ran out and then I did a second coat with the clear. And now I'm going to be using some Dixie Belle buttercream to go over this. And I am going to do 1 coat over the whole thing. And that's after, the 2 coats of primer. And now I'm going to use some chalk paint from Folk Art. And it's called Nautical. And what I'm covering here is this is just a glass candle holder that I got at a thrift store. You can find these anywhere, like for 25 cents or whatever. And I had also sprayed that with a clear coat before I even did anything with it. So now I have a salt wash and I am going to mix that with the buttercream because I want a little bit of texture on it. And I want to just add enough texture to kind of make it a little bit texturized, but not too heavy. This is just kind of a light texture that I'm going over the second coat of my Dixie Belle buttercream. And I'll go over the whole thing and we're going to be letting that dry before we move on to the next step. And I'm paying special attention to where the 2 plastic pieces come together in the middle. And I'm just kind of stippling it with my brush. So I'm just trying to disguise it a little bit. You'll still see it, but it won't be noticeable. So now what I'm doing while I'm letting those dry is I am using a mold. And it's called Easter Wreaths. And it's by Redesign. And we're going to be using quite a bit of this. And I also have some fast drying resin. And the way that works is you mix it 50-50, 50% part A, 50% part B, and you mix it, and then you pour it, and it takes about 10 minutes for that to set up. And because we're going to be doing this on an egg, we're going to have to make sure that we pull our molds prior to them being completely hard. We want them to be soft and flexible. So there's a point in which you can pull it to where, it's cured enough. And then you just you put it on your, whatever you're doing. But if you wait too long, then you can use a heat gun or whatever. But it doesn't work as well as if you pull it, right away. So I'm going to be paying attention to that. And you'll only see me glue it onto this 1 egg, but I'm actually going to be making another one with this other part. So I'm going to go ahead and cast those pieces as well. So as you see, I'm pulling it out, and it's still kind of moist a little bit, but it's hard enough that it will keep its structure. And I just glued it on with Gorilla Glue. And now I'm mixing up some salt wash, only this time it's a little bit thicker. And I'm taking it and I'm putting it on the sides of where all the resin is. And I always usually do that simply because there's usually some sort of a little gap there. And what this does is it kind of eliminates that gap, especially when you use resin. So now I'm mixing up a salt wash mixture with my blue paint. And we've already had one coat on the candlestick. And I'm doing this second coat because I want it to have a little bit of texture, because later on we're going to be putting a white wax on it, and it always to me looks better if you have a little texture in there. And this is not really heavy texture. I did add a little water to it, and I'm just making sure that I go over the whole thing. My main focus on this too is I don't want it to look like a glass candlestick when I'm done. So this will help disguise that. And now I have a napkin that I bought from Temu, and I am taking pieces of this napkin and using my water pen. You could use a paintbrush with water, and I am just taking pieces out of the napkin that I think I want to use. I think I pull several birds out of there, different flowers, some butterflies, just different things that I want to put on my egg. And I'm just kind of looking all over and picking out things that I think I'll want to use. I know I use several birds, and I definitely take different flowers and butterflies and things like that, and just kind of get them all ready so that I can put them on my egg. And I'm going to be using Dixie Belle Clear Coat to attach these. And all I did is put some clear coat down, and I'm using it as my glue. And then going over it, I'm using a fan brush so I don't rip my napkins. And I'm just trying to place them all around the egg in different spots. I'm not overly concerned with wrinkles because we'll be able to get most of those out in a little bit. So I just want to make sure that my paper lies flat, that it's adhered good, and that it doesn't have any bubbles in it. So, and here's where I take some other pieces on there, and I try to avoid overly big pieces on there because that's where you're going to get your wrinkling and bubbles. So I'm just using a lot of little pieces. And the thing about it is that that white napkin blends right into this egg, so where you really can't even see where it begins and ends. And now I took some saran wrap, and I am just going over all of my little pieces, making sure they're down and smoothing out any wrinkles and getting it as smooth as I can. So now I'm going back over my candlestick with Dixie Belle Clear Coat, and that is to seal the chalk paint. And I'm doing the same thing with my casting and the front of the egg. And also the back of the egg. I did the back also. So now what I'm doing is I am taking my Dixie Belle white wax, and I am going over my candlestick. And we already put down the clear coat, so I'll be able to wipe a lot of this back. But that's one reason why I put the salt wash on there. Giving it a little texture always gives that wax something to grab onto, And in my opinion, always makes it look a little bit better. So I'm just using a wet wipe and wiping off quite a bit of it. And I just go back in and back and forth and put on some, take it off, do whatever. So now I have my egg, and I am taking again my blue paint, my folk art nautical, and I am going to paint the inside where the casting is. The castings are that part in between. And honestly, it's not hard to do this. Just get a detail brush. It really is pretty easy. It takes a little bit of time, but not a tremendous amount. It's actually easier than it looks. So I'm going to go all in, and basically I kind of go close to the castings, and then I get a very small detail brush and then go up to the edge. And if I go over anywhere, I just take the buttercream paint and go in and touch it up. It's really doesn't take much to fix it. So now I have some polyacrylic, and this is the high gloss clear gloss. I think clear gloss is what it's called. And I am taking this and going over the entire egg with it. I'm wanting this to look like porcelain or china, or when it's done, glass, basically. And giving it a higher gloss finish will do that. And I did do it to the front also in the castings. And now I'm taking some white wax, and I am putting the white wax on the blue. So it's going to look similar to the candlestick. And it's going to give it a little bit more of an aged, faded look. So now I'm taking some Dixie Belle Grunge Gray, and I'm taking that and going over all of the castings and around the edges, because I am going for a vintage, old, antique look. If you don't want that, you could have stopped at the point where I, put the blue on and not done any of those things. It's really up to your taste, but I always go for usually the vintage look. And I'm putting it in the casting and making sure it gets in the all the little spots, and I'm wiping off a good portion of it. And I'm going on the outside, on the edges, anywhere that you would normally have that type of buildup in there. And I apologize for portions of the video that are off camera. I think my camera angle was moved or something. I must have moved my camera. And now I'm putting some of the grunge gray all over the back portion. And remember that we did put a clear coat on there, so it's very slick. So a lot of this is going to come off, but I want to have a little of that on the back, or it's going to look kind of funny. It's not going to match. And now what I'm doing is I took some polyacrylic and a little bit of Ranger Re-Inker Vintage Photo, and I made a glaze with it. And I'm going to be putting this on and then wiping it off. I didn't want to use any type of a glaze that was a matte finish, because I'm trying to achieve a gloss finish. So I basically made my own because I wanted it to be high gloss. Now a good portion of this glaze will get wiped off. As you can see, I'm using a wipe as I'm using it. I'm not using it just as a top coat. And here I added some more of the polyacrylic because I thought it was going on a little bit too dark. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on and wipe a good portion of it off. And again, this is a higher gloss finish, so it's going to still have kind of a glass look, but it's just going to be a little bit more vintage. And so now what I'm doing is I am using some rub and buff, and I have some silver, and I started putting it on with the silver. And mind you, these the rub and buff winds up looking a lot more gold and, whatever after it dries. On camera, it doesn't really look like that. It just looks like gray. But then I decide that I'm going to try some gold because I'm not really buying the silver, but I put the gold over the silver, and I actually really like that look. So I decide that's what I'm going to do all over. I continue to put some silver down, then I put some gold down, and I think it looks really good. It looks, I don't know, a little bit more vintage. And the idea of putting it on the way that I am is that I want this to look old, like it's been around for a long time, and that the gold had been on there and it's chipping off. So now what I'm going to do is I am taking my candlestick and I am using my Gorilla Glue. This is construction, maximum strength, clear construction adhesive. And then my Gorilla Glue super glue. And I am putting it on the very top there. And I am going to attach the egg to this because it's going to be its stand. What's really great about these eggs is that they are flat on the bottom, so they adhere really well. And the last thing I do to this is I am using, I believe it's called the Vintage from IOD. There's four different sets of stamps. And this is the crackle stamp, and I am going over this egg with my archival ink black. It's a permanent ink, and just putting some crackle and wiped it down if I thought it was too dark. And here is our finished egg, and I think it turned out really good. Here you can see the crackle. And like I said, if you don't like that vintage look, you can just kind of omit those steps if that's not for you. So now we're on to project number 2, or egg number 2. And this is the mold that I cast earlier, and then I glued it on. And I had already sprayed this with the primer. So now I'm just taking my Dixie Belle buttercream, and I'm going over the whole thing. And this is just to give us our first base coat. And I didn't show you this in the video, but I have this little glass container that looks like a little pot, and I end up gluing it on here pretty quick. And I glued it on with my Gorilla Glue and a couple drops of the other glue, the super glue. And I did that because I realized after working on the other one, it's much easier to work with this if you have something to hold on to. So I think right after this coat, I let it dry and then I glued the two together. So it's basically just, it's actually a votive glass holder that I had. So now what I'm using is my Dixie Belle Duck Egg. I absolutely love this color. And quite honestly, I guess I could have painted the egg and then put my castings on, but then I would have had to paint my castings separately. So either way, you still would have had to do some detail work. And I'm taking this duck egg and I'm going over the entire egg with it except for the castings. So I do have to go around them kind of like I did on the other one. But honestly, if you have a detailed brush, it is not that hard to do at all. As you can see, that brush is not even all that detailed, and I think it came out of a kid's paint kit, so it's not an expensive detail brush. And again, if you mess up, all you have to do is get your other coat, like I had the buttercream, and go in and touch up later, which I do on all these. So now you can see the little flower pot that I've already painted with a couple coats of the buttercream, and I had also sprayed it with the matte sealer prior to doing the buttercream. So now I'm going on the inside, and you can see while I'm holding this, it's a lot easier to work with this than trying to hold it in your hand. So whatever you're going to do, if you're going to put a base on it, I recommend doing that. And it does take, an hour or two for it to be completely dry. But it's well worth it because then you have something to hold on to as you're painting. And I go right up to the rim of that flower pot. So now what I'm doing is I'm looking at some transfers. And these are some redesigned transfers. And I've used these little rabbits before. It's called Cottontail. And you can get these on Amazon if you'd like, or you can get them on Etsy. And I apologize for some of this again being off camera, but I'm picking this out. And I'm going to tell you strategically, this is where I messed up. Trying to put a transfer on a shape like an egg or something round is kind of hard if it's big. And I did cut slits in it, but I think the easiest thing would be to cut it in pieces and do it section by section, which is what I end up doing. So anyway, I always, when I'm doing it on something round or whatever, I start in the middle and you just take your transfer stick. I put the middle down first and then I start trying to put the transfer down in the middle, but I'm also going around with my scissors and I'm cutting all the way around in different spots, not the actual transfer, but the plastic, so that it can bend and be manipulated around the egg. But the shape is rough, so it's hard to get around that. And so I do the bunny just fine, but I realize that it's going to be really hard to get the flowers on. So I go ahead and cut them apart. And you can see on the top, a couple of the pieces already started coming off. And all I did is match those up and put those on. The important thing is to make sure that you seal your whatever you're doing. And I did seal this with a spray sealer before and let it dry. So there is a sealer on this. And after I do it all, I go ahead and burnish it. And that's just taking the shiny side and rubbing on it and making sure that all the pieces are down. So it works. You just can't use too big a piece on there. I would definitely, cut it up in pieces like I did, and that worked a lot better. So I love the way that bunny looks now, and so we're going to concentrate on the front. And what I have there is I have just some metallic paint that I think I bought at Five Below, nothing special. And I'm taking the white metallic paint and I'm going over all of the castings with this white metallic paint because I want it to look kind of like porcelain, but I don't want it to cover perfectly. I want it to be kind of just in spots because I want it to kind of look like it's a chippy old piece that's been around for a while. So I'm going through and I'm covering basically the tops, and I'm not worried about perfect coverage. I'm not going all the way down to the blue, so I'm not really worried about, getting it in there perfectly. But I go all the way around. I also do the bunny and the bow that I put on top. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking the same type of metallic paint. It just has a nice shimmer to it. It's hard to see on camera, but I'm going through with different colors and I'm painting the flowers that are in the casting. Not all of them, just some of them. And I'm doing the leaves, and I'm just going around all the way around and doing quite a few of them, really. I also do the bunny in kind of a metallic bronze color. And I do the bow in just gold rub and buff. So now what I'm doing after it's all dry, I'm taking some grunge gray and I'm going in the castings and I'm rubbing that in there, especially to get all inside. I have a stiff brush that I'm using. I really love the grunge gray for giving an old look. I think it's very authentic. I like brown also, but I think I kind of like the combination of the two. I, I like to use the grunge gray and then maybe put a little bit of a wash of the brown like I did with the glaze over it. I think it looks more authentic. And so I'm putting the grunge gray all over the entire egg, and I'm just kind of going over that a little bit and wiping it off. And I'm also taking a sandpaper and scraping my transfer to make it not look as new. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking the white wax by Dixie Belle and I'm going over the egg with that as well. And I'm just kind of sponging it on and then wiping it off. And again, this was sealed already, so it wipes off pretty easily, so you have a lot of control. But I like the way that it kind of mutes the color a little bit, which I think it would naturally look like if it was older. Again, if you don't like a vintage look, you could skip all of those steps. So now what I'm doing is I'm going ahead and I am painting the pot And the color that I'm using for that is called Cottage Door, and it very much looks like terracotta, and that's by Dixie Belle. And I'm just doing the entire pot, and I'm going to do 2 coats. Let one dry and then do the next one. Now, if you had a terracotta little pot, you could certainly use that to do the same thing. I didn't have one. Well, I have some, but they were too big. This was a good size. And I also put white wax on the little terracotta pot and a little bit of the grunge gray just to make it look aged. I don't want it to look new if the egg's looking, older. I want it to kind of match. So now what I'm doing is I'm using that same polyacrylic mixture, only I added a little extra polyacrylic to lighten it up a little bit, and I'm covering the egg with that. And again, that is a clear gloss, so it's going to be glossy to kind of make it look like porcelain or glass. And I also really didn't say on the metallic pieces, I did rub that off a bit so it was faded. So here it is. I think it looks really good. I think it looks old and vintage and very cottage. And I also did put the crackle stamp on this. I didn't show you that, but there's some all the way around the egg to give it a more vintage look. You can see it more on the back. I think this egg looks good on either side. So you can definitely see the little crackle now. I like that look, but like I said, if that's not something you like, you can definitely leave those steps out. Now on to our third and final project, or final egg. This one actually did not turn out the way I thought it was. I went in a completely different direction. First off, I'm starting out with a redesigned Decor mold, and this is called Meadow Hair. And I am going to be casting most of these pieces. And I have an extra mold out because I always usually pour too much, and I don't want to waste it, and so I go ahead and usually just pour it into an additional mold. We're not going to be using that other one, the IOD one, but I just have it out there so that if I over mix, I don't waste it. So now I have some recycled decoupage paper, and I have this green egg that I'd already sprayed with the primer, and I decoupage the entire egg with that recycled paper. And now I'm cutting out the casting. I kind of over poured it and you had to cut it out. And I glued it on the egg with the Gorilla Glue and my super glue. But I didn't like how it looked. So what I decided to do is I took my Dixie Belle buttercream and I mixed some salt wash, and I did a very, very heavy salt wash mixture. So it's very thick. And I decided I was just going to paint the whole thing right over the decoupage paper because I just really didn't like how it ended up looking. And I figured I already had the texture from the decoupage paper on there, and it was on there good. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go ahead and go right over that. I mean, it's a shame that I waste the decoupage paper, but that just goes to show you that, you know, if you're doing something and it's not turning out the way you think it is, you want it, then always be prepared to just go in a different direction. And now what I have is one of the little candle holders that you get from Dollar Tree. They usually have them in silver and gold. And I am taking my Gorilla Construction Adhesive and super glue, and I'm gluing the egg to it. And I also painted it again with that same salt wash. It was primed as well. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking several different paints after the salt wash is dried on the candlestick and the egg. And I'm using Parisian Gray by Folk Art, Oatmeal, and that by Folk Art, and Chateau by Folk Art. And the reason I'm doing different colors, I just have a little chip brush. I'm just going in and I'm dabbing these colors on and mixing them as I go. I sprayed a little bit of water in my little palette because I do want them to blend and mix, but I don't want them to be totally mixed together. Just kind of dabbing all the way around. And I'll just take a color, and I'm just trying to make sure that I add this color all over, including the candlestick. I want the base on this, the candlestick and the egg on this one, I want them to look like one solid piece. My goal is to have it look like cement when it's done. Like it's just a cement casting. So I'm going all over it. And I still want some of the white in the background. And so now what I'm doing is I'm taking my Grunge Gray by Dixie Belle wax. And this is great because it adds a darker gray finish to it, but it gets all down in those little deep crevices of the casting. And of course, I'm wiping it off as I go. The thing is, I have not put a clear coat on this, and I don't want to because I want a very flat appearance on this. So all I will do is add waxes to it. I'm not going to add any type of clear coat because even a matte clear coat will make it shiny, and that's not what you want if you're looking for a cement look, in my opinion. You just want to use wax. So I'm taking this wax and I'm rubbing it all over, but I'm definitely taking it and putting it in all of the little castings to make sure that it gets in there. And because there's not a clear coat on it, a lot of it is going to stick. So that is going to add to the cement look. So I wipe off quite a bit of it, but there's still a lot on there because it wasn't sealed. And then I take my white wax from Dixie Belle and I'm going over the white. I think the white's really important if you're going for a cement look, because that cement always has that white look that comes from the lime that's in it coming to the surface. And that really, really gives it a very, very good cement look, I think, on top of the gray. And some of it kind of mixes a little bit. And what this will also do is this will seal your piece completely, because wax does seal it. And then you don't have to put any kind of clear coat on it. Because even the flat coats all have a little bit of sheen. And this way it'll stay flat and, look like cement. So here it is. I absolutely love it, and it was a mistake to begin with, and I think it turned out great. It definitely, to me, looks like cement now. And I think it really turned out great. So thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this motivated you to go out and do some of these, because they're super fun. And I hope to see everybody again soon. Take care.